Molly here. Welcome to our channel. Today we will be discussing Star Trek Discovery Season 5, Episode 5, Mirrors. If you're one of those people who must have some sort of number with your review, a rating, all of STD will be a thumbs down unless I explicitly say otherwise. So just assume this is a thumbs down, and if you don't like that, move along. For the rest of us, here's the recap. The episode begins with a personal log from Book. He gives us a quote from his mentor, Cleveland Booker IV, Moll's father. He tells us that Cleveland Booker IV gave Book his name and a new life, and he told Book, no matter how bad things get, the one thing you always have is a choice. This telegraphs that the episode is going to be about choices and daddy issues. Book says he's made some questionable choices, but he's made some good ones too. That's how he knows it's not too late for Moll. Book says that Moll's father showed him that he could be different, and Moll's father's example led Book to change his ways and saved him. He owes it to Moll's father to do the same for her. Meanwhile, Stamets and Tilly have found a wormhole leading to a pocket of interdimensional space. The opening is continuously collapsing and expanding, and looks like something you would see if your dog was getting ready to leave a present on the living room rug. I swear they do this on purpose, to invite such criticism, and I just rose to the occasion, but maybe this is their attempt at being funny, so it kind of worked, but this really doesn't belong in something calling itself Star Trek, so I'll just move on. The rapid opening and closing of the wormhole was likely caused by the burn, because they can't stop including stupid things they've written in the past. Discovery is too big to get through the opening. Oh god, I can't believe they just made me say that. So they will have to take a shuttle instead. Michael Burnham and Book will be going into the wormhole. Commander Rayner rightly points out that Michael Burnham, as ship's captain, should not be going on this away mission. He should be the one to go. She tells him he's needed on the ship. He tries to convince her to take a security team with her, but she insists their advantage is Book's personal connection with Moll, and the implied threat of a security team would nullify that advantage. Rayner and Michael Burnham disagree on tactical advantages, and Michael Burnham asks Rayner, what is this really about for him? And she uses a phrase from Rayner's culture telling him to speak freely. He says he's just doing his job, and part of that job is to protect her. Then she asks him when was the last time he took the con from another captain. He can't say because it's been so long. He's actually hesitant to take command because they have such different leadership styles, and he doesn't want to jeopardize such an important mission. Michael Burnham tells him she believes in him, and he has his orders. Because we're supposed to believe that Captain Rayner, now Commander Rayner, who has been in Starfleet for probably more than 30 years, lacks the confidence to take over command from Michael Burnham. Right. Michael Burnham and Book take the shuttle and head for the wormhole. Michael Burnham asks Book what he's going to say to Moll, and he doesn't know. He says maybe he'll tell her they're not so different, which, if anyone watches The Venture Brothers, you'll know that Brock Samson gets that a lot. We're not so different, you and I. And it's to the point where it's lost all meaning, and it just falls flat here too. Whatever. Book thinks he can reach Moll, and Michael Burnham tells him they'll need to bring them in either way. Book brings up the time bug, but Michael Burnham won't talk about it, other than telling him there were some surprises. They make it through the opening to the wormhole, and inside the environment is chaotic. There's debris everywhere, and they see Moll and L'ak's ship has been destroyed. That's when Michael Burnham spies the ISS Enterprise from the Mirror Universe. They dock their shuttle, and they make their way to the bridge. Michael Burnham points out her brother's station on the bridge, and she sees from the sensors inside that Moll, L'ak, and the next clue are in sickbay. On the way to sickbay, Michael Burnham and Book pass by a room filled with bedding, blankets, and kids' clothes. She picks up a locket that was lying on a table. There's a picture inside, but I can't make out if it's supposed to be characters we know. At any rate, Michael Burnham places something that looked like a hairpin pulled off of her comm badge inside the locket. She'll use this to try to trick L'ak into thinking that's the clue later, but it's not going to work. Book is reading the history of the ISS Enterprise's crew from a plaque on the wall. During this ultimate act of telling and not showing, we learn that the Terran High Chancellor was killed for trying to make reforms. The crew of the ISS Enterprise escaped, mutinied, and brought refugees with them, and tried to flee to the Kurtzman Trek universe. A Kelpian slave turned rebel leader helped them. So, action Saru in any universe. The escape pods are all gone, and Michael Burnham and Book hope the refugees made it to safety in the Kurtzman Trek universe. Michael Burnham and Book get to sickbay, where Moll and L'ak are using the hologram system to create holodoubles and make it more difficult for Michael Burnham and Book to figure out which of them is real and to stop them. And yes, the ISS Enterprise had a hologram system in their sickbay. Michael Burnham and Book quickly shoot the room's holo emitter, leaving only the real Moll and L'ak. The two groups start bickering. Michael Burnham points out that Moll and L'ak's ship is in pieces, and if they surrender, Moll and L'ak will get out safely. Book comes out from behind a post and tells Moll that he and Michael Burnham are there to help, and that Book knew her father. Moll tells Book that her father was garbage, and she and L'ak are not going to rot in a Federation brig. Michael Burnham tells Moll that they'll get a fair trial, and that she and L'ak don't have another play. L'ak tells Michael Burnham she's wrong. She and Book may have a shuttle, but he and Moll have the next clue. Moll suggests they leave the wormhole together. They replicate the artifact/clue. Michael Burnham has a copy, and then she and L'ak leave with the original. That's when Michael Burnham tries to pretend that she has the clue. Things start to go sideways, and Michael Burnham says whatever trouble Moll and L'ak are in, the Federation can help, and Moll blurts out, can they erase an Eraga? That's when Michael Burnham figures out that L'ak is Breen. An Eraga is a Breen blood bounty. The Breen are after Moll and L'ak, and Moll and L'ak want to use whatever it is at the end of the clue trail to get the Breen to release the blood bounty. Book says, Moll, what did you do? And we go into a flashback to Moll and L'ak's past. As it turns out, Moll was a courier delivering dilithium to the Breen. So maybe somebody can explain to me why they were needing dilithium after the burn, but whatever. So who knows where this took place in the timeline? I don't know. This must be after they fixed that. They weren't specific. This just seemed like a stupid reason to incorporate. Anyway, L'ak is the difficult nephew of Breen leader, and he was relegated to working what amounts to the loading dock. He hates his life. He and Moll fall in love. He shows her both of his faces, which may have been moving if we'd had any setup to why that was important at this point, and if Moll wasn't a cold-blooded murderer. Moll tells L'ak that she's taking a contract with the Emerald Chain because she needs Latinum to start a new life on a colony in the Gamma Quadrant her father told her about when she was a child, which is a safe place where people can just live their lives and be themselves, and she asks L'ak to come with her. They get caught by L'ak's uncle. He tells L'ak that he carries the genetic code of the Yad Thought, they who rule. Yet, while they campaign for the throne of the Imperium, L'ak consorts with lesser beings, and he does it with a solid face, which is an insult to his heritage. His uncle opens his own helmet, exposing a glowing green face, and states, "This is Breen." L'ak asks, "Then why can we change?" This makes me think the Breen are a bit like the Talon in Earth Final Conflict, that they are energy creatures that can take a solid form. L'ak insists that both faces are a part of them, and if they deny half of their nature, they deny all of it. His uncle tells him they have evolved past the need for that form, and holding it makes them inflexible and weak, and there is only one path to redemption, and L'ak must kill Moll. L'ak takes the gun his uncle hands to him, shoots and kills the two Breen holding Moll. His uncle says, "Eraga!" So, L'ak shoots his uncle in the shoulder, only wounding him. Moll asks L'ak, "Why didn't you kill him?" And L'ak tells her his uncle raised him. Moll convinces L'ak to go with her. Back in the present, Book tells Moll that she has a choice. She chooses to start shooting. Their little firefight in sickbay triggers a system lockdown, trapping Michael Burnham and L'ak. Moll and Book go to the bridge to try to free Michael Burnham and L'ak. They talk about their daddy issues, and we're treated to Moll's sob story. She cries and says L'ak is the only thing that matters to her. Meanwhile, back in sickbay, Michael Burnham tells L'ak that the Federation is all about second chances. She and Book are living proof of that. L'ak wants to know if he and Moll turn themselves in, would they be able to serve their time together? And Michael Burnham tells him she would advocate for that. L'ak tells her he would rather die than be separated from Moll. On the bridge, Moll and Book aren't having any luck getting the shields down in sickbay. Book tells Moll that her father loved her, and he hated his father too, for a long time. Moll decides she's done waiting, so she creates a power surge, which does free L'ak and Michael Burnham, but it also fries a bunch of the systems, causing a bunch of explosions, and Michael Burnham and Book's shuttle floats away, leaving them all trapped on a barely functioning ISS Enterprise. When the containment field comes down, L'ak and Michael Burnham fight. L'ak accidentally gets stabbed, leaving him wounded, and Michael Burnham gets the next clue. Moll has the opportunity to kill Book, but doesn't. They go to sickbay where Moll finds a stabbed L'ak, and Book tells Michael Burnham that the shuttle is gone, and they only have a few minutes before the Enterprise reaches the aperture of the wormhole. Michael Burnham and L'ak get to the bridge, and Michael Burnham uses a tractor beam to send a message to Raynor. Raynor tells Stamets, Adira, and Tilly to make the aperture of the wormhole big enough for a starship to come through. They, for some reason, need ideas on how to accomplish this, and the bridge crew collaborates and figures it out. As they approach the cervix, Michael Burnham tells Book in case they don't survive, she wants him to know that during the time bug jumps, he was one of the surprises she mentioned earlier, and that it was nice, and they were happy. Discovery gets the hole open and pulls out the ISS Enterprise. They're pulled free, and the wormhole permanently collapses. Moll and L'ak escape the Enterprise in a Terran warp pod and somehow manage to get away, but they left a warp signature. Detmer and somebody else are going to fly the ISS Enterprise back to Federation headquarters storage. In the Discovery bar, Dr. Culber and Tilly talk. Dr. Culber is overwhelmed because he died and was recreated by a mushroom patch and had Janal in his head, and now they're on a quest to find the thing that created them, and it's all so big and impossible to grasp, and part of him loves it, even though it's terrifying. But Paul, his husband, hates the unknown, and Dr. Culber doesn't know how to talk to him about this, so he's talking to Tilly. She tells him change is hard, but it can also be freeing, and Culber says he knows that, but he's not sure what this will all look like. And Tilly tells him it sounds like Stamets isn't the only one who hates the unknown, and he should talk to somebody about that. Personally, I think that person should be his husband, but what do I know? Tilly tells Culber that the intellectual and the spiritual aren't really that far apart. Both reach for understanding and bring us to new places. Dr. Culber tells Tilly he didn't say spiritual, and she says he kinda did. Michael Burnham tells Book there's no word on Moll and L'ak yet, but Starfleet has every ship in the sector on high alert. She shows him the next clue, and it's a vial of some kind of liquid. Stamets is going to have to analyze it in order to get the next clue. Book asks her if she wonders why there's a lesson with each clue, like valuing life forms other than their own. It turns out a Terran scientist had been aboard the ISS Enterprise, and she and the others managed to escape to the Federation, where she joined Starfleet and became a branch admiral. She was the one who hid the clue on the ship. The members of the ISS Enterprise had hope and found freedom, and the lesson with this clue is that, like them, we can shape our own futures too. Through the window, we see the ISS Enterprise leaving. Michael Burnham turns to Book, and she tries to talk about what she said to Book about being happy, but he cuts her off and says, "We were, weren't we?" Then Stamets interrupts and tells Michael Burnham he's ready for the vial. Book asks Michael Burnham what she thinks will happen when they finally put all the map pieces together. She says she doesn't know, but she can't wait to find out. The end. If this was a CW show, I would understand their writing choices and even the insipid messaging, but this is supposed to be Star Trek, so as unoffensive as most of this was, it was mostly just stupid. I did see potential there. I wish that the Moll and L'ak story had been fleshed out in a different way. That Moll wasn't such a cold-blooded murdering. I'm sorry, I don't have any kind of empathy for her because she is a nasty piece of work. I don't care what her upbringing was. She is going around cold-bloodedly killing people, and I'm supposed to feel bad for her because reasons? Whatever. If this was a different franchise, they could have told this story so much better, and it would have meant something. But like I said at the beginning of the recap, it's clear to me that what this season is trying to do is rehabilitate Moll. All these people want to do is take these terrible criminals and rehabilitate them. Oh, it's okay, now you get your second chance. What is up with that? I truly just don't understand what they're trying to do here. I mean, there were a couple good messages, like lead by example. That was a good one. But at the same time, you can't example your way out of being a murderer. Like, seriously?
I have 3 or 4 words to say about this, depending on how you spell the last word. Now entering glory hole.
Oh, here I thought it might be a sphincter says what?
Well, that's a good second place. Because when I saw that thing, that's the first thing I thought of was that episode of the Orville. I think it was the episode when Claire and Isaac and her 2 kids crashed on that planet and the Orville was chasing them. And they had to go through some sort of subspace anomaly or some anomaly of some sort. And that was the joke there, was they were going to call it that. And that's what this reminded me of. And this episode was a joke. Because I completely agree with you. This reminded me a bit of those of you that heard our review for Strange New Worlds and what we keep calling the hot dog episode. I think it's what, tomorrow, tomorrow, and tomorrow?
Yeah, like tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow.
And what Molly was saying, and I agree with, was that episode, if it would have been a Hallmark romance movie, it probably would have been okay if it was some sort of sci-fi fantasy romance movie with Ace Ventura and Discount Drummer. It probably would have been fine.
I could have rewritten this to be so much better.
But what this was a CW show.
Yeah.
This was like Batwoman or Riverdale or any of the other CW stuff.
Was it Gotham Knights?
Yeah, Gotham Knights, that one season.
Yeah.
Because I agree, there wasn't anything overtly offensive like last week when they were trying to rewrite the Michael Burnham history. But the stuff that was happening here, I can only think somebody who is maybe in high school or earlier would find this stuff interesting. Because L'ak and Moll were supposed to be like, I don't know, a Sid and Nancy if you flipped the roles around or something. It was, the flashbacks were immature and very juvenile. And it was like, if they weren't in a sci-fi setting, they could have put it in a high school. And L'ak could have just been wearing like a leather jacket and been the cool guy. We'll call him Dylan. And then you could have her and call her, I don't know, Brenda. And then they could have their little romance going on. And it's them against the world. And the language that Moll was using was so contemporary. It sounded like it could have been from a television show made in high school today. That's how she was talking.
Yep.
I don't have anything specifically I can complain about as being, oh my gosh, they did this. It's just more of discovery. All I can say is this is yet another episode this season where they are strip mining the past. This time they were mixing 2 things. They were strip mining from TOS's Mirror Mirror and, hey, remember the Breen from Deep Space Nine? Remember them? Yeah, we're going to use them. And I've made this argument all season long with Discovery, and I'll make it again. They're following the formula that they were trying to do with Picard Season 3. I truly believe that group of people that thought Season 3 of Picard was good, if Discovery just would have brought in 1 or 2 of the actors from Voyager or Deep Space Nine or even TNG, somehow magically transported them into Season 5 here of Discovery, with all the member berries, I think that group of people that liked Season 3 of Picard, they'd love this. Because it's just a bunch of member berries, just like Picard, but used in a way that, when they're combined together, don't really make a lot of sense.
Well, I remember that episode with Picard in Season 3. I don't remember which number it was, but they were stuck at the bottom of that gravity well in the nebula, and they had to be birthed out with all those little space creatures. This felt a little bit like that. Another instance where you're trapped inside some sort of anomaly, and they had to figure a way out. It wasn't exactly the same, but when you break it down to the core premise, it was. Are they using the same blueprint for this that they used for Picard Season 3?
I think so, and I think the audience that likes Picard Season 3, they'll say, oh no, I'm not going to like this because this isn't the TNG actors. Yeah, that's really the only difference. What the Discovery producers should have done was just, I don't know, have Seven travel in time and have her magically appear in the Michael Burnham era. And you have a few of these original actors from the 90s Star Trek, And it's the same formula as Picard, and those people that were eating up season 3 of Picard, they'd love this. I'm convinced they would love this.
And also, in this episode, I don't know if anybody else noticed this. They probably did. Y'all probably noticed this, that they were really pushing hard trying to flesh out Raynor's species culture. And that goes along with all the member berries, in my opinion, because I think they understood that one of the complaints about modern new Trek was that they weren't really doing anything to show us the cultures of these different species. Previous episode, we complained about the lack of a tech manual. And I think their answer to stuff like that was to try to give us this culture, for lack of a better word, where Michael Burnham goes and reads all of this Kelleran customs and literature. It just feels like they're going back and taking obscure things like the Kelleran and the Breen, and they're trying to flesh them out themselves now. Which, again, if this wasn't new Trek, Kurtzman Trek, whatever, if they were actually doing a competent job, I wouldn't object to that. But because of the low quality of the writing, these things are being fleshed out by people who I wouldn't hire to write obituaries for the newspaper. It bothers me that that's what they're doing. So they're taking things from the past that weren't well spelled out and they're filling it in with their own stuff. And I don't feel like these people are good caretakers of property. So it horrifies me when I see them doing stuff like that. And at the same time, when I saw that ISS Enterprise, obviously it was based on the Enterprise from Strange New Worlds, but if this was being done by competent people, this actually could have been something really cool and really enjoyable.
Yeah, it would have been. In fact, it would have been that Enterprise two-parter. What is it? In a Mirror Darkly. Because they actually spent time on the Enterprise series with Scott Bakula recreating a proper bridge like that.
Yeah.
So an old Constitution-class starship, they actually got correct, or at least close enough to correct where nobody really noticed. Because I think they're just strip mining. I mean, I would push against a little bit that they're fleshing out the Kelleran. What did we learn?
We didn't learn anything, but now there's some inside connection between Michael Burnham and Raynor.
We learned that apparently they boil cakes, and there were a few other little idiosyncrasies that they were bringing up in dialogue when he was working with Tilly and Adira and Stamets to try to figure out how to get through the orifice.
Yes, the orifice.
But this is all superficial. They're not fleshing out anything. The Breen, I suppose they did a little bit when it came to the flashbacks, and you could get a little bit of idea of how their government ran, or at least how some of their supply chain ran. I mean, what did we really learn in those flashbacks about the Breen? Because as you said, when they took off the mask, what it looked like to me, and I agree with you, it reminded me when the Talons from Earth Final Conflict, they can fluctuate between their energy form and their solid form. And that's what this reminded me of. I don't believe in Deep Space Nine they ever showed the Breen without their masks on. So this is, I think, completely new. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But I didn't feel there was anything new in this episode. It was all just rehash, strip mining. I mean, I do get what you're saying, that they're looking for these obscure pieces of mostly 90s Star Trek, but a little bit of TOS. And then they're trying to unearth it and say, hey, let's build on that because people like that. If we show we can build on that. And you know what? It might work. There are many people that like Lower Decks. And that's, to me, all Lower Decks is, because I tried to watch it. I tried 3 separate times to watch it. And every single time, it's just a bunch of member berries thrown at me. Once in a while, getting a reaffirmation of older stuff, I'm fine with. But if all you're doing is just bringing up member berries left and right, you're not creating anything new. You're just rehashing what came before. And I just don't know what the point is of this episode, this season, or this entire series of Discovery.
I know studies have shown that when a person watches something they've seen before, it helps to ease anxiety because they know what's going to happen. It's predictable. And oftentimes it also takes them back to when they watched it the first time. And it feels like using all these member berries and this mashup of previous plot lines, I think that's an attempt at trying to appease the older audiences because, remember when the Kelleran were on Deep Space Nine? Oh, I remember. I think that's what they think is all that's needed to make us happy.
Picard season 3, that worked fine.
Well, for a lot of people, I guess it did. For me, it didn't.
Yeah, for us, it did not. But there's a group of people out there that thought Picard season 3, although not perfect, it was better. And it was not better. All they did is they had iconography closer to proper Trek. That was the only difference they had. That and having actors from the 90s Star Trek.
Yeah, so it's clear to me that they don't listen to our actual complaints about new Trek. They just assume that it's because, well, there wasn't enough recognizable memberberry stuff to keep us happy. So they're going to do that, pat us on the head, say, see, here you go. Meanwhile, they're going to still have all of their insipid, everything's about being connected. The answer to life is being connected.
Dime store philosophy.
Yeah.
These people writing this have no concept how to answer those questions they're bringing up.
And wouldn't the Borg be the ultimate connection? So it bothers me that they throw out this, like you just said, this dime store philosophy. And it just feels moronic to me. The more I watch of this, the more insulted I get as far as the intelligence level of this writing.
A critic would come at us, I think, and say, look, there's no making you happy. When we do what Discovery was doing in the early seasons, or we do Picard season 1, and we're doing our own thing, you complain it's wrong because we're doing our own thing. Yet when we go ahead and try to show respect to the older series, you're also not happy. And my response to that is, the reason that doing your own thing didn't work is because you should be making some connections, again, a different kind of connections, with making it feel like it fits in the universe. But if all you're going to do is rehash what you did in the past and just rehash it a little bit and say, I'll flesh this a little bit out and not move anything forward, then that's not the answer. So the critics who would say there's no making you happy, it's because you're not trying to do what a lot of us want you to do. We want you to make it feel like it fits in the Star Trek universe and do new material. And if you can't do that, then you're not very good at your craft, and you probably shouldn't be working on these series because it takes a certain type of writer to be able to do both of those things. And then Discovery was stupid enough when they first started to make it a prequel of TOS. So they had all sorts of things they had to line up, and they made almost no attempt to do that. They'll give you a lip service and say they did, but they did not. We all know they did not. They did hear some of our complaints, because I think last week, trying to fix Michael Burnham retroactively, I think that was well, people say Michael Burnham's still this war criminal, and she never felt sorry for what she did, and all they did was they went back and rewrote history. So I guess my message to the people who are criticizing us is, you're still not giving us what we want. We're not asking for you to do a completely new franchise. It's either Star Trek or it's not. But then you also need to do new stuff. Expand the universe. And if you can't do that, step aside. That just means you don't have the skill set to do your job. Just step aside. Secret hideout. Just step aside and let another group come in who can do both of those things so that Star Trek can move forward and we can start having proper Star Trek.
To address their desire to do their own thing, to make this their Star Trek, well, first of all, it's Star Trek isn't theirs. It's not ours either. Star Trek was a franchise that belonged to everybody. And when you're the caretaker of something like that, you don't have the right to put your own stamp on it, to recreate it in your image. The arrogance of it, the sheer hubris. And as far as Michael Burnham's second chance, the rehabilitation that she's getting, all she ever does is go around saying, oh, I got a second chance. She doesn't talk about all the people who are dead because of her, all the generations of people who didn't exist because of what she did.
What did she learn?
Nothing.
See, I'm willing to say maybe I could believe a second chance, but you have to admit the mistakes you made first. And then maybe you can make people believe that you've learned from that. But my complaint, and I've been complaining about this for a long time, last season when Michael Burnham said that I have an intrinsic understanding of Klingon culture, when Book asked, how is this different than the Klingons, reaffirmed that Michael Burnham learned nothing. So if she didn't learn anything, then she has no right to say she's getting a second chance because she still hasn't finished her first chance.
And if they had taken a security contingent with them, Moll and L'ak may not have escaped.
No, they would have gotten captured.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's almost stupid of us to even be picking apart the internal logic. But yes, had they brought a security force with them, and Moll and L'ak would have been captured very quickly. They were in that sick bay. You have a security group go in there, take down the room, and take care and secure Moll and L'ak. And when they were on Discovery, this is what I didn't get. So you have Adira, and I'm trying to remember Adira's rank. Ensign, maybe lieutenant, but I think she's an ensign. And then you've got Lieutenant Tilly. And then you have Stamets. And Stamets I'll give a little bit of credit for. But Stamets is the guy who runs the mushroom drive, right? And then, where was Jet Reno in all of this? I thought she was hired in a couple of seasons ago to be the head engineer. So where was she? They were trying to do very complicated things, making stuff work. Where was Jet Reno in all of this? They had, except for Stamets, they had underlings, people who were lieutenant or under, working on this stuff. Where was somebody who actually was at a rank that could come up with proper solutions?
I think there's two reasons for that. Number one, they didn't want to pay Tig Notaro for another episode. Number two, if she was there to solve this problem, then Rayner wouldn't have had the opportunity to ask for collaboration amongst the bridge crew. And I think that's what the real goal was.
And that
to show that he can now listen to the ideas of these members of the bridge.
That was so cringy, that bridge scene when they were collaborating. That to me was some sort of playground group effort being done on the bridge. That did not feel like a work group that was trying to solve a problem. It was embarrassing when they were doing that because I scratched my head and looked at Molly and said, where's Jet Reno in all of this? They're asking a lot of engineering questions. Why is the mushroom guy there? Again, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought his expertise was in that mushroom drive. So, I mean, I'm sure he knows a bit about engineering, but he was the mushroom guy, right? So Jet Reno would know more than him, because remember in the flashbacks last week, he was kind of faking a joke as they were time jumping and trying to get Jet Reno to solve a problem for him. He was like, hypothetically, what if this was happening? And then Jet Reno gave him an answer. So they were establishing that Jet Reno had a lot of expertise. So where was she?
Yeah. Again, if she'd been there, they weren't able to have that weird collaboration on the bridge. And didn't Rayner offer, like, beer or something to the person who solved the problem? I mean, it was... again, it's like a weird kind of party atmosphere, for lack of a better word, instead of a professional crew trying to get something done. It was just...
This is a weird cult.
Yeah.
We said this a couple of episodes ago, and I'm standing by that. The Discovery crew is a weird cult. It's a cult that you don't want any part of. You will get absorbed into that crap like Rayner has. Rayner did have a few good lines in this, like when he was talking to Stamets, and he said... He asked him a question and said, like, you got 10 words to give me an answer. And again, I appreciate that because these people tend to drone on forever on this show. And then he couldn't finish it in, was it 10 words? So he said, okay, you've got some more words to finish this. So, like, he got that little jab in there that I thought was good. But the rest of the time, he was just so indoctrinated into this cult that Michael Burnham has formed. I almost run out of stuff to say about this show because what else is left to be said? This episode was a bit of nothing. It did nothing of any adult consequence. It was a bunch of high school kids having high school moments in high school corridors. They could have set this in a high school, and outside of the science fiction orifice story, it would have fit in with a high school. All these daddy issues that were going on. Of course there's daddy issues, right? Because the only problems that are in the universe that make bad people are daddy issues, right? At least in the Star Trek universe. It's just daddy issues. No big deal.
Here's my prediction. Because Moll and L'ak went off in that, whatever the hell that was, pod, warp pod. They went off in that thing, and L'ak was injured. So is it going to be that she's going to be following Discovery so that she can get the Progenitor tech to heal or resurrect L'ak? Is that what this is going to come down to at the end? So much like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where the baddie shot Indiana Jones's father to force Indiana Jones to go get the cup to save his father's life. Is this going to be an instance where she either shoots Book or Michael Burnham herself to force the other to go get the Progenitor tech to save Michael Burnham or Book?
It has to be Michael Burnham because she needs to be resurrected. Because we already know Michael Burnham is the most special person in the entire universe, but she still is mortal. So they want to add this extra piece so that she rose again from the dead. In fact, I don't know. She might be dead for, I'm going to guess like 3 days before they actually use the technology on her so she can rise again. I just picked that number at random. There's no real reason why I picked it.
And what's with this spiritual stuff? This isn't the first episode they've mentioned that in. That seems to be a running theme. And it goes back to what I said a few episodes ago where they're on a mission to meet God. I don't know. This isn't science fiction. This is like fantasy.
It's a CW show, I'm telling you. It's like a fantasy soap opera that's set in a high school, but it's just based on a starship.
Yeah.
Because when they get that Starfleet Academy show up and running, that is going to be one of the most cringiest things I think we've ever... And most cringiest. You got to use double superlative there. The most cringiest thing that we're ever going to see, because this stuff is already high school level at best. I would argue middle school. And then they're going to set it in an academy, so they're going to make it so it's like some sort of ongoing frat sorority party all the time. The future of Star Trek looks so bleak. We can only hope that the sale goes through to somebody, and that somebody, the first thing they do is immediately halt all productions of anything new from Star Trek. Just halt it. And I would make the argument, the stuff that hasn't aired, maybe you just do like what they did with Batgirl last year. I think it was last year, 2 years ago. Where they, might have been longer than that actually, where they just said, we're going to eat the dollars on this. We're not ever going to make a movie out of this. So whatever's in the can right now, and I realize it's video, not film, just don't release it. Just say done. We're not going to release this, or dump it on YouTube for free, because that's probably going to get a better audience than when they do it on their stupid streaming service. So the review for this is, outside of the synopsis Molly gave, okay, it wasn't like overtly offensive. It was just run-of-the-mill Discovery stupidity. So, like Molly said, to preface this whole video, it's a thumbs down. I don't know how many stars you'd give this. 3? Because at least it didn't do anything that was like overtly offensive and trying to rewrite canon. Sort of. But then you could say the ISS Enterprise stuff, because at first, when she picked up that locket, at first I thought that was her in that locket that had her and Spock in it, but you couldn't really get a good look at it to see who it was, right?
When I paused the television to see if I could see it, it looked like it was probably a mother and child. So I don't think it was her and Spock. But at the same time, why is she even looking at a station on an ISS ship and saying, that was my brother's? He wasn't your brother. That was Mirror Spock. If I even buy into that crap.
He's not even her brother.
Yeah.
She was a foster child into that family.
Yep. Yeah.
Actually, she wasn't. That's the made-up mythos they created. Spock did not have a sister. We all know Spock didn't have a sister. I'm not accepting Cybok So if I'm still having trouble with Cybok, I'm definitely not accepting Michael Burnham.
Yeah, I totally agree.
This was probably the least offensive of the season, but it was stupid and drawn out. I think it was, we looked it up, it was the second longest runtime of this season. Episode 1 was the only thing longer than this. It kind of moved along okay, but for Discovery, I just kind of sat there while stuff was happening. And by the way, the choreography in this episode was horrible. They had a couple of fight scenes in this episode, and all they did was shake the camera and move it from different angles, so you could never see what was going on, because it was bad. What I could make out was really, really badly done.
Oh, it was so bad. Watching the actress who plays Moll throw around the breen. Yeah, right. And again, there was a fight scene actually between her and L'ak before they knew each other and fell in love. And he's like smacking her around, but she's definitely holding her own in that fight. It was ridiculous. It was absolutely absurd.
When Michael Burnham was fighting L'ak, Molly and I looked at each other and said, L'ak's not going to win this. Michael Burnham, if Superman was in a solar system with a yellow sun, he still couldn't beat Michael Burnham. Nobody can beat Michael Burnham. We found out last week, not even Michael Burnham can beat Michael Burnham. That's how ridiculous it was to even have that. It's not quite absurd enough, this episode, to be like Picard Season 3 when they had like the Penguin throwing out some of those stupid lines she was. It wasn't quite that ridiculous where we could just laugh out loud. I just sat there with a glazed look over my face, just waiting for the minutes to tick on. It's not like I was hating every minute of this, because I've seen some episodes of this series where that's exactly what was going on. Last week was a good example of that. It was just stupidity. Oh, look, they're talking about their feelings. Oh, they're doing some technobabble, but the lead engineer on the show isn't even in this talk. Oh, okay, now they're talking about boiling cake and okay, and then bad dads and then Moll talking about stuff and her feelings, and it was like watching a high school show.
I've seen worse, but this was not good. As I said, unoffensive, but stupid. Not really worth your time. And it's a shame because, again, there were some pieces there that I think they could have worked with if this was being done by competent people, but it's clearly not. So it didn't amount to anything.
I think there's 10 episodes total in this final season. Final season. And last week was a filler episode, and this week was 90% filler episode.
Yeah.
What are they doing? They only have 10 episodes in these short seasons of modern Trek, and they've had 1 3/4-ish episodes of filler. What are you doing?
Well, think about this. We got more information about Moll and L'ak in this episode than we've ever gotten on, say, Detmer, or a number of other crew members who've been around since season 1.
You mean actual character development?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So actual recurring characters from the very beginning of the series have had less of a background given to them, possibly less screen time too, but they've gotten less time dedicated to them than these new characters just for this season. And like you said, this is the last season. This is it. So those other characters, they're never going to get their due.
The way this should be working is all the pieces are on the board. We're in the final season. Every piece is on the board. So every episode should be moving some big story forward. And that's not the case. They're doing filler episodes. Like, they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, we all know that from like 3 seasons ago, actually 4 seasons ago. But it's clear they just don't know what they're doing. They're just filling episode time with stuff that doesn't matter. This 5th season so far has done nothing of any consequence. We know this Progenitor technology. We found that out in the 2nd episode of this season, and we're now going into episode 6. What's really moved forward since episode 2?
They've gotten closer to finding the tech. Which you can say in every episode.
I don't think they're any closer now. I mean, I know technically they're putting another piece to the puzzle, but it doesn't feel like they're any closer now than they were in episode 2.
Well, and again, this whole season, especially this hunt for clues and the little messages, I guess, lessons that come along with every clue, it's obvious that they sat down with a mission of what ideas they wanted to push this season with the connectedness and all the rest of this stupid crap that they've been doing.
Like any good children's show from the 80s, what they should do is at the end, they should have somebody from the crew talk about the lessons they learned today and look at the camera and say, knowing is half the battle. Discovery!
Oh, see, mine went directly to He-Man.
Well, He-Man had those too. In today's episode, He-Man decided that friendship and connection was the most important thing. Even though the sorceress was mean to him, he still knew that the sorceress loved him and cared for him. They should just do that, and it would accomplish the same thing, and it would be pointing at the same audience that is currently watching this stuff.
Even though Orko made a mistake and exterminated a bunch of people, he still deserves a second chance.
He deserves a second chance, even though he'll never admit what he did, or even try to apologize to those families of what he did. Orko's fine. He's fine. And what we've learned today is that you give people as many chances as they need. No matter how many people they kill, you keep giving them more and more chances.
Oh god, this is awful.
Because knowing is half the battle.
Yeah. This is so stupid. Anybody else watch this crap? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.
Take care.